Welcome to Martini Time, my favorite time of the day. I get to talk to you and have a martini too. So let me see what my monkey mind's going to jump on today. It's Trump and the GOP. That's the only ring that I seem to jump on and hang and swing on today because, well, it's so interesting. And what we're swinging on today is reminds me of Zen. Everything reminds me of Zen. But in Zen, Zen is described as having a hot iron ball caught in the throat, and you can't swallow it, and you can't cough it up. And Obamacare seems to be the white iron ball caught in the throat of the GOP. They can't get rid of it, and they can't repeal it, they can't change it, and they can't replace it. So, I just think this is very ironic, and I don't have any sympathy for the Republicans in the sense that they brought this on themselves, and it seems to be just the there's another saying too, that your strength turns into your weakness. Given enough time, your strength will become your weakness, and it seems like we've had enough time, and the Republican strength is now its weakness. And so it's good to take a couple of steps back, put on a wide-angle lens, put on a Zen lens, and see it in the context, and also see where this is pushing us, you see. Because when you get the hot iron ball stuck in your throat, it forces you to transcend yourself. That's the whole point of Zen. Now, the Zen cones are white hot balls caught in your throat. You can't solve it. You can't get rid of it. The master gives it to you, and you can't. It's also not described as a rat caught in a bamboo shoot. It can't go forward, can't go back. Or it's called catch-22 or a double bind. No matter what you do, you lose. Lose, lose. Which is just what Trump promised to get us out of. We're going to be win-win. Anyway, this is more about the Republican Party, because it's created the playing field in which Trump came running onto the team, you see. So the field had to be prepared for Trump to appear. You see, he didn't just drop in like Mr. Bean, something totally created by himself. He was created by conditions. So we have to look at the conditions and to see if they have reached their apex or if it's just going to continue. So in Zen, the whole idea is to awaken the mind that does not rest upon any form or value. To awaken the mind that is not attached to personal value. Because when you're attached to value, you're in conflict with other people who have values. So you get into a value war. And when you're talking about value, you talk about your identity. So you're not talking about some pragmatic way to fix things. You're talking about your soul. I mean, you're talking about your absolute identity. And so once you got that ball stuck in your throat, you can't compromise. You see, and you can't get rid of your value. You can't swallow it. You see. So this whole, what from my view, my little wide-angle view, is that the GOP has brought itself to this particular point in history where it finally got everything it wanted, complete control of the three branches of government, and yet they're paralyzed. They can't move forward. And it's ironic that they arrived at this point of power by polarizing the American society into two value camps, liberal values, conservative values, each of which cannot, so you can't want once that, and the Republican Party became the value party. Not that the Democrats didn't have values, but they had values that I talked about this the other day. Whatever values the Republicans excluded, the Democrats included. So whatever the Republican Party didn't include, the Democrats include. But here again, this is a value conflict, a cultural war. We've talked about cultural war. It's a value war, and you can't compromise. So when you can't compromise, you see the whole constitutional system that we have been experimenting with and operating under is a dialectic of opposites, where you have two opposite parties and they get in a dialectic of competition that evolves into a new whole. So you get two parts, and then that transcends itself into a new whole that includes both the previous parts. It doesn't evolve into a new whole by excluding the other half. It's kind of like having a husband and wife have only half a baby. The baby includes both mother and father as a new being, you see. It includes the qualities of both, you see. So the thing works. And this is the reason that America works is because this is the dialectic of evolution. This is the dialectic of progress. This is the logic of progress, how progress, and life is progress. This is the logic of how life works. So if we're not in alignment with this logic, we're into a tape loop. It's like a river that has circled back in on it, meandered back in on itself, and just flows around in a circle. It's no longer going to the ocean. It's just tape looping, Groundhog Day. So we've been Groundhog Daying, tape looping for the past 40 years. And so it seems to have the tension of this, the suffering of this, the paralysis of this, the anger of this, the frustration of this, cannot be sustained. It's either got to break and transcend itself into a new America, a new coalition, or it's going to self-destruct. And you can see the self-destruction happening in individual eruptions of mass shootings and various insane acts, insane acts like mass shooters and all that is basically an eruption from the tension of the society that individuals susceptible to that tension will take the nuclear option, which is mass self-destruction. Better death than this. Let's go out with a bang. Armageddon, the end of times, bring it on. We all, that the frustration of not being able to progress. If you can't progress and you can't make the creative leap, has to end in total war, self-destruction. Hitler, that was the end of the Nazis. They couldn't break out, they couldn't win. Total war! Destroy everything. No person left alive. Nobody deserves to live, you see. A total destruction. And I was watching a documentary, the Japanese, the kamikaze was that. They couldn't break it, they couldn't break out, they couldn't win, so self-destruction. And the terrorists, self-destruction. You see. So either we transcend or we self-destruct. And I really feel like we're at that kind of a place now, where the Republican Party is caught with this hot iron ball of Obamacare that they can't repeal and they can't replace. And they can't keep it. So, you see, you can see the predicament they're in. And so they're in kind of like a situation now where they have to do something. And that's the problem, because when you have to do something, it's going to be something bad. And so now what they're talking about is repeal without replacing, which is basically the Hitler solution. Just let everybody die. Destroy the whole thing. Destroy the whole thing, and then maybe something will grow out of the ashes. Maybe then the people will be so starving and so starved for health care that they'll just take any piece of crap we throw at them. Thank you. See? So that, that feels like that's where they're at, in just this frustration of not being able to break through the logjam they created. How did they create it? Well, I've been looking at this for decades, basically. It's very interesting to understand our history in terms of psychological and inner dynamics, which is what I do. So I see ourselves, I see myself reflected in the historical screen as metaphorical pointers, not only to the history, but also to how my own mind works, how my own life works, you see. And we all come to these intersections in our life where we get caught in a double bind, where our actions, our strength, our drive brings us to a place which in the movies is called a sting. A sting is like with the famous sting with Newman and what's his name? Forget. Anyway, the sting is where you set up conditions so that your target's strength will lead him into his own trap. So he's trapped, and it's a surprise because he thought he was winning. He thought he was succeeding. You see, he thought he was in control. And so the sting leads him into a situation where the trap springs and he sees that he was caught by his own hubris. He was caught by his own ignorance, his own blindness, you see. So the sting is really a spiritual trap. And we set these traps for ourselves because we are all life. And the impulse of life is to transcend. Just like the impulse of the river is to go to the ocean. The impulse of life, the drive of the intention of life, is to transcend itself. And primarily in the life of man, which is mental and spiritual, this takes the form of the world we live in, not so much in our bodies. Our biological evolution, that's pretty much over, unless we evolve an extra finger to push computers, you see. But, or whether we get have taller or shorter or whatever. But I mean, basically the biological evolution is over. Now it's the mental evolution and the spiritual evolution. And we experience this play in the world that we create and in the mind that we live in. So evolution is going on. Life is in man is evolving consciousness now. consciousness to spirit. And this is all about transcending the previous stages, like the butterfly transcends the worm. The worm has no idea what a butterfly is. In fact, he goes dysfunctional before he goes into the cocoon. So there's dysfunction before the surrender to the new order of the butterfly. The butterfly can remember the worm because the worm is included in the butterfly. The butterfly is a worm with wings, you see. But the worm has no idea what the butterfly is. So in our particular state now, we have no idea what the butterfly is. So there are those that are leaning towards the butterfly and those that are leaning away from the butterfly. One is regressing. One wants to restore the past, cling. I like my wormness. I like being a worm. I don't know, the butterfly's unknown. I have no idea. That's death to me. What do you mean? Jump off a twig? Ha, you kidding? I'm crawling. You see. So we've got in a stage of this evolution where we're going in two different directions. There's the force towards, and I won't just give this, say the Democrats want it. No, it's the force of our national life that's moving towards a greater understanding, a greater order, a greater inclusion. Life is always including, not excluding. Evolution is inclusion, not exclusion. So if we're going towards exclusion, like building walls, throwing people out, we're going in the wrong direction. If we're going against United Nations and Europe in any kind of cooperation with other nations, we're going towards exclusion. We're going towards isolation. We're going towards exile from the global community. It's the wrong direction. So we can see this going on right now, and I think with the Obamacare, it's just so metaphorical, because Obamacare is stuck in the craw of the GOP because they made it a value. They made Obamacare a metaphor for Obama and big government. And as a value, that's evil. See, values are moral. Values get into my value is good and yours is bad. And you can't have both values in the same place. One or the other. And by God, it's going to be mine, you see. So values can't live in the same house unless there is some transcending value that holds them together. Now, I think this is the problem, is that when the Republican Party, back to Goldwater, who said, extremism in the defense of freedom or liberty is no vice. So what he was basically saying there, now this was in the Cold War context, but this morphed into America without the Cold War. But the implication here is that, speaking as a Republican, the defense of freedom is any means to the end. But whose freedom? Now Goldwater was speaking in the terms of American liberty against communism. But when communism died, this morphed into a world without an enemy. No more communists. In fact, there was no enemy. We were number one when the Cold War ended. So who's the enemy now? If you're going to have values, you have to have some opposite values to fight against. Otherwise, you can't be your value. Your value needs to have an enemy, an opposite value, in order to get strong, you see. My value, my country, right or wrong, you see. You can't do that unless there is an enemy or an opposite, you see, or an other, you see. So what happened was that freedom became a Republican value. Who's going to take away your freedom? Well, the communists were gone. Well, you look around, the government. So the government's going to take away my freedom. Okay. Now I got something to fight for. Now I got extremism. The means to the extremism and the fight for my liberty is no vice. So I can do anything in order to fight for my freedom. And who's threatening my freedom? My very own government is. Now, and then who's running the government? The liberals. And the liberal media and the universities, you see. The science. It's all liberal. It's all evil. It's all trying to take away my freedom. Now, you see the impossibility of this paradigm? You see the impossibility of this, you see? That is the white iron ball that can't be swallowed or coughed up, you see. Because you have taken possession of the value that holds the nation together, you see. America, freedom, is America's value. But if you make it the GOP value, well, then the other half of the country is against freedom. And now you've lost the absolute value that holds the country together. Now you have no whole to move you forward. You see, the whole, when the value of the whole is freedom, then you keep evolving towards greater and greater freedom for the whole. The absolute value, which is transcendent of freedom, moves the dialogue, moves the dialectic to greater freedom. But as soon as you say, my freedom is the absolute freedom and your freedom is against my freedom, the dialectic stops. Now you have a civil war. Now you got a logjam of two opposite freedoms, each of which saying I got saying that my freedom alone. Now, to be fair, while the Democrats are certainly at fault and the liberals here, the liberals never became the party of liberty and freedom and patriotism in the Bible. That has been primarily the Republicans' flag. So they were able to create a coalition of religious evangelicals, bankers, people who are basically the old-style Republicans who want less government and more business. And now you have white nationalists, and then you have segregationists, and then you have Islamophobes. So you have all of this coalition of people who want to preserve their freedom against this enemy that is coming to take away their freedom. And that enemy is fill in the blank. Anything you want, you see. So the coalition remains the same, but you can have a lot of different enemies here. And that's the formula for the destruction of the democratic process, which cannot work unless you have an absolute value that holds the two opposites together and moves them forward to greater realization and manifestation of the absolute value. So unless we're all going for everyone's freedom, the game stops. And you end up, like the Republicans now, just playing against the wall. Instead of like a tennis game, instead of having two players, they're just throwing their ball against the wall. And everyone knows nothing's going anywhere, you see. So this basically is Zen. So, but Zen is not concerned with the collective, with history, with mankind, with the nation. Zen is concerned with me, my liberation, my freedom, my understanding, my transcendence, you see. So, but the formula is the same. We're being brought to a place in our history where it's like the end of the pirate's plank. we either have to step off into working with both parties or just self-destruct and blow the whole thing up, you see. And, so this, and this is the talk right now. Well, maybe the Republicans, since they can't cough up or swallow or cough up the Obamacare, will sit down with the Democrats and pragmatically fix the car we got. Obamacare is just a health care. It's not Obama. It's not evil, you see. It's not the greatest threat to humankind. All these exaggerations. It's just a health care policy. You can fix it. It's just a policy, you see. So if they can let go of the value they've put on, this negative value they put on Obamacare as the greatest evil that ever happened to America, this great oppressor, you see how they've exaggerated the Obamacare into this ogre, this antichrist. Of course, that's what they did with Obama, so that's why his name is on it. You see. So we're watching this in the front row seat. We got a front row seat to this great historical drama that is really an existential crisis in America. This is an existential crisis of our democratic system. Is it going to transcend itself and get back in alignment with its Constitution and the dialectic of progress, where you have the two parties competing to create a policy that includes the values of both sides? Or do we just, the Democrats and us, just sit on the sidelines and watch the Republicans self-destruct? It's very interesting, very interesting. Thanks for dropping in.